So recently, I found myself doing a lot of alt leveling, and while leveling these alts, I realised that I could be doing Warsong Gulch and farming up my reputation in advance, as opposed to waiting until I got to max level, and I would benefit from the lower level rewards that I would get with the reputation as well to help me in my leveling process. But of course, the reputation grind for Warsong Gulch is quite daunting, so I decided to bring this video out having done a little bit of number crunching to decide as to whether or not it is worth doing Warsong Gulch on your alts while you are leveling. So let's dive in. So the first thing that we need to look at is how daunting of a grind this is. So I always like to look at the cons before we look at the rewards, and the big con for farming Warsong Gulch reputation is that it is slow. Now this is actually mitigated by doing it early as opposed to doing it at level 60, where most people are going to have decent gear and you're not really going to encounter the opportunity to just absolutely dominate people like you can at lower level brackets. So if you find yourself at a bracket where you are at the higher end of the level bracket, so upwards of ending in 5-6 of the bracket towards the 9 point, be that 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, or if you are say the same at 37, 38 and 39, then you will find yourself able to win a bit more easily, whereas at level 60 everyone's going to be level 60. Now the reputation gained is going to be the exact same at level 60 or any level bracket below, and that is going to be 35 for a flag capture or 50 that you gain for handing in 3 marks of honour that you acquire by taking part in Warsong Gulch. Now the marks of honour are attained at a rate of 3 for a victory and 1 for a defeat, so you can extrapolate from there how much you're going to get for your performance. However, it is worth noting that queue times for Warsong Gulch at low level brackets are very low, and the games can also be quite short. So if you get yourself a decent team, or if you know what you're doing and you're quite well geared and can carry it yourself, it's not uncommon to be in a situation like I was in this footage that you're seeing, where I queued independently for 3 Warsong Gulches, averaged a roughly 1 to 2 minute queue time, and then averaged an 8 to 10 minute win time for each of the 3 that I participated in. Now the negatives of this is that in order to get to Exalted, it's going to take 42,000 reputation. Now I managed roughly 600 reputation in the half an hour that I played, having got short queues and rapid wins, which does mean that this is going to be a long grind. There is no real way around that. From the numbers that I got and the numbers that I've seen from other people around the internet, it takes roughly between 50 to 80 hours of Warsong Gulch in order to get to Exalted, from what I'm given to understand. Now that is a big commitment, and that means that it is probably going to be beyond a lot of people, just simply in terms of the time it would take. However, there are rewards all the way up, and these rewards start from as low as level 18 and as low on the reputation grind as friendly. So I think it is worth looking into what rewards are available and what you have to do in terms of reputation to be able to get those rewards, to see if they're going to be good enough to help you in the leveling process. So let's have a quick look. So starting your grind, you will be at neutral, and the first new bracket that you will attain will be friendly. Now friendly is only 3,000 reputation to achieve. Now with those numbers that I gave you before, where for example I got the 600 in the half an hour, that means in 2.5 hours you will have attained friendly at that rate. Now admittedly that is a high rate of reputation gain, but it is what I managed, so it is a reasonably achievable one as well. And then we can look at what these friendly rewards are and as to whether they would be worth doing that little 2.5 hour grind for. Now the first thing I want to say before we talk about the things that you can see on screen here as the friendly rewards is the fact that there is some debate as to when these particular rewards will be released. At the time of this video, they are not attainable by players, but none of the rewards that are going to be discussed are. The earliest these are going to be available is going to be at the patch for Blackwing Lair in February. Now that is, at the time of recording, right around the corner, so getting this grind out of the way to be able to attain these on your alts isn't a bad thing. Now going into the items themselves, as you can see here, we have 2 trinkets. Basically, it's one trinket that's available to any given character, it's just which one you get that varies by your class. Now, what I would say is that the on-screen available trinkets are the level 40 versions, but there's actually 2 versions of these trinkets. Like, there are many versions of pretty much all of the items that I am going to be showing you in this video that vary by item level. Now, these are 2 that have the lowest amount of variance, having simply a level 20 and level 40 variant each, that provide the same stats as the level 40 variant that you see on screen at the level 20 version, just simply at a lower value. So, if you are playing any class, in my opinion, I think it is worth grinding to friendly to get these trinkets. Now, why is that? That is because at level 20, trinkets simply don't exist. If you grind this out, it is going to be that you will have this trinket compared to having an empty slot on your character screen. And of course, that is going to be a very good thing. Now, what I would say beyond that is that even though that makes it very clear that even if these trinkets were crap, you would still want them because it's better than nothing, these trinkets are actually pretty good, and dependent on what it is you're playing, they can actually be fantastic. So for example, the Rune of Duty, available to warriors, paladins, hunters and rogues, provides stamina and health per 5 seconds. Now, this is great for, let's say, the hunter or certainly the rogue when you are leveling, because it's just going to give you that higher health pool to prevent death when fighting the mobs, as well as also giving some good sustain and also recovery outside of combat to get your health back, to get you into the fight quicker, and that is just going to be fantastic. However, if you are playing a warrior tank, especially at the low level bracket, that extra stamina can make all the difference in the world. And also, again, for warriors in particularly, unlike the paladins, they don't have access to healing, so that HP 5 is actually invaluable. Now, when it comes to the Rune of Perfection, this one is a little bit more variable dependent on what it is that you are playing. For example, if you are playing a feral druid, then the stamina is going to be great because you will be taking hits. However, the decrease of magical resistances on your spell targets is probably not going to be all that helpful, given that you won't be casting spells at your target. Similarly, if you are healing on a priest, you are only going to be hitting friendly targets with your spells, and as a result, the magical resistance is wasted, and chances are you're not going to be taking hits while healing dungeons, so the stamina is not going to be too useful either. On the flip side of that, however, if you are playing a mage or a warlock, that magical resistance reduction on targets means that your damage is going to be incredibly high compared to somebody who does not have this trinket. So again, there is some people where these trinkets aren't worth the grind, but they are on the way to later levels, and it is something that you can get which is better than an empty slot, so I highly recommend these for absolutely everybody. Now next up we have Honoured. Now Honoured is going to give us access to rings, necklaces and a cape, and it is going to take 9,000 reputation from start to finish. That is, from when you first enter Warsong Gulch the first time at 0 on neutral to achieving Honoured, it will take 9,000 rep. If you've already done friendly, it's a further 6,000, which means that you will be looking at roughly 7.5 hours total time at the rates I achieved to be able to get to Honoured. Now, is this worth it? Now, I would argue again, for the vast majority of people, it is. If you are playing a melee class, then both the ring and necklace are absolutely fantastic, whether you are melee DPS or melee tank, providing large amounts of stamina and agility, which is good for pretty much everybody due to increased critical strike chance and some strength as well. Now, not only this, but at the lowest level brackets that these are attainable, which is 18 for a variant of all of these, then necklaces in particular can be incredibly hard to get your hands on at all, if not impossible other than this necklace. And rings are a bit more attainable, but certainly not easy to get, and certainly not to get ones that are well suited for you. Now if you're not playing melee, then your options are going to be the other ring and also the cloak. Now the other ring is providing a benefit to magical damage and healing done with all spells, as well as MP5, and that is absolutely invaluable. And the cloak is also providing an increase to healing done. So that is going to be more useful to healers, of course, because they're providing healing, whereas no one else would get benefit from that. However, it is worth mentioning that the stamina and spirit alone are also going to give some value to everybody. So if you haven't got a cloak, then that is one that is going to be useful to you as well. But it is obviously designed for healers. Now again, I think that these are well worth the grind, particularly when you bear in mind that once you've done that grind, you can get a variant of this, of all these items like we've discussed, at 18, again at 28, 38, 48 and 58. There is a variant at every level bracket of 10, and it is at the 8th level in that bracket. So next up we have Revered, and at Revered you're going to get your hands on some weapons. Now obviously weapons are incredibly important to most classes during the leveling process, however this is where we do start to have some variance in terms of my recommendations. Now these weapons are all excellent, however the amount of rep required to get Revered is 21,000, so this is going to be where you get a very big time sink occurring in this reputation grind. Now if these reputation rewards are valuable to you, or if you just love Warsong Gulch, then it is probably worth doing. Chances are it is going to be worth doing for most people, but it is at a point now where if you weren't to do it, there is a very strong argument to be made for that as well during this leveling process. Now the weapons themselves are a bow that is pretty powerful and does provide stats at a lower level than a lot of bows often do. You may find that a lot of green bows at low levels, for example, just have raw damage on them, which is perfectly fine for hunters, but if you're using bows as a stat stick, then of course getting your hands on stats earlier is better. The dagger and sword both provide very good damage per second, decent speeds, and also decent stats. And again, of course, all these rewards are available at 18, 28, 38, 48 and 58. So you would be covered for weapons for the entirety of your leveling progression, which is something that is well worth bearing in mind because weapons are incredibly important for some classes. Now, the staff for casters is also quite interesting, mainly because of the fact that it does give that mana per 5 seconds, which at the lower brackets is something that is very hard to get your hands on. So again, that is something that maybe is worth bearing in mind, particularly if you're playing a class that is struggling for MP5 and mana regen, as well as also having it be a big limitation factor for you in terms of your performance. But again guys, this is 21,000 rep required from start to finish, so this is a big commitment and something you should decide whether you want to do early or not. And now we get on to the big guns, what we get when we get to Exalted. Now I'm going to show this as two parts due to the fact that there are a lot of rewards I want to cover. So this is going to be part 1 and this is going to be the braces. Now the rep required to get to Exalted is of course this big barrier that's the elephant in the room that we're going to have to discuss, and that is 42,000 rep required from start to finish. So once you've got to Revered, it's that same amount again to get yourself up to Exalted. Now, that is a big barrier for a lot of people, and if it is one that puts you off, then I'm sure everyone would understand as to why you wanted to give up at Revered and not bother to go to Exalted. However, if you do that grind, then you can get yourself some excellent rewards. So, this first page here is showing you all of the braces that are attainable at Exalted. These have variants at 40, 50 and 60 for all 4 variants that you see on the screen here, one for each armor type. Now, these are for the most part just very basic items. They provide the rudimentary stats in the form of strength, agility, stamina, spirit, intellect. The mail and cloth do provide attack power and bonus healing and damage respectively. But for the most part, when you get to the higher brackets, so once you start getting towards level 60, there are probably going to be better variants available for you. That being said, these are going to be fantastic starter items when you are first trying to gear up, and that is something that is invaluable. And depending on where your stat weights are for your class, these may even actually be pretty good options for you. So that is worth bearing in mind and considering whether or not you want to do the grind or not. But one thing that is certain is that the level 40 variants, if you were to get to Exalted as early as that, are probably going to be best in slot up until the point where you can start getting your actual best in slot for level 60. Now finally, we are going to be discussing the final rewards that you can get from Warsong Gulch Reputation, and that is in the form of the Epic Legs. Now, these are not going to be available in February. There is some debate as to whether they would be or not. I would be amazed if they were, given the stat weightings on these items being comparable to items in Nax and the Phase 6 rewards that you're going to be able to get there. So I would imagine in Classic we're going to see these right at the end of the life cycle of the game. Otherwise, well, everybody's going to need to do Exalted in Warsong Gulch to be viable in raiding. And as a result of that, I do think that this part is sort of a little bit redundant, other than if you are wanting to start your rep grind incredibly early and take your time doing it. At which point, it is worth bearing in mind that almost all of these, to my understanding, are going to be best in slot for the vast majority of classes and specs as soon as they become available. So if you are wanting to be a complete min-maxer, then you are going to want to do Exalted at some point, so that when these legs are released you are able to get them. There may well be best in slot that you can get from raids that are better than these, but they are of course going to be less attainable than simply doing a rep grind in Warsong Gulch, and that is something that you can start grinding out now, months in advance, on an alt that isn't even 60 yet. Which means that as ridiculously inaccessible as these are for the amount of grinding required, they are actually the most accessible option, and something that you can start working towards today. Some notable options here are going to be in the form of the melee DPS variety, because it is providing hit and crit, which is the two most vital stats for practically all melee classes. So that's what makes these so good. If you can get your hands on alternatives, then by all means do so, but just know that these are here for you. So that's going to about wrap it up for this video, guys. To conclude with regards to whether I personally think it is something that is going to be a viable option for people as to whether they want to grind this reputation out early on alts or not, I am personally of the opinion that friendly, once those trinkets release, is going to be a grind that everyone is going to want to do on every alt, up to friendly before level 20 if you possibly can, or as quick as you possibly can if not. Honoured is going to be something that I would highly recommend for the vast majority of classes, particularly if those items are well suited for the class in question. But from Honoured onwards, it is a judgment call, unless you are playing during the point where those legs are released, in which case you are probably going to want to get Exalted for those legs. And obviously then you can bear in mind that if you're going to want to be Exalted in the future, then you may as well grind it out now as best you can. But that's going to about wrap it up for this video, guys. I do hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do let me know down below, and I hope to see you in the next one. Later!